This is part 8, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through quickly the My Tips section, which I've done. And what that will do is when you log in and you click on My Tips, it will just show specific tips to that user, ones that they've uploaded basically. So yeah, I'm going to go through that, and then I had a request to go through a little bit of the database tables that I've made and are using, and also just explain how my folder structure looks. But I will be giving the code away completely in the next couple of videos. I don't know when. I think I'll do the favouriting stuff in the next video, and then possibly that'll be it for this, and then move on to something else. I don't know. But yeah, but I will give it all away. But there's no point giving it away each video as it changes, because it's just long-winded. And then, I mean, if people are working off different versions of the code and I change something later on, then it just becomes confusing, doesn't it? So yeah. So anyway, it's enough of that. So what I'll do first is let's go on here. So let me load the app actually. Right. So here's the app. In the last video, I believe it was the last video, we went through the logging in and creating an account. So I've done a few things in this one. In this part, I've added a log out button, which is just a back arrow like everywhere else in the app. If you click that, it logs you out. I've added the My Tips screen, and also a couple of different API calls. So if I log in now as who's got, let me just do the test account, because at the minute there's about 3 different accounts that we're messing around with for this. So that button there logs you out, but it remembers your username and password. So if you click log out by accident, your username and password will be there anyway, so you can just go straight back in. So we did the load more, add, so My Tips, and like I said, the help button, I'll be getting rid of that, and I'll be doing a favourite tips, something around that sort of nature. But yeah, we'll go through that in the next one. But yeah, so My Tips. So what this is doing is this is loading all of the tips that the current user has added, and I think there should be like 2. Yeah, so it's 2. So we've got that image there which looks stretched out, and that's just because I just uploaded it and I didn't resize it in the thingy. But yeah, so these are the 2 images for this user, and it's got a load more button as well. But if I click that, there's not going to be anything. It's just going to say all tips loaded. But yeah, so I'll show you how to do that. And right, actually, the best thing to do now, I guess, is to go through the actual pages, because they've changed slightly. So on login, we are, let's have a look what's going on here. What, have I changed anything in this? I'm not too sure. Okay, so on login, before we were just we were calling this start up module here, and we were running the start app function. But before, we were just doing this, where we just call the start app function, because initially what that file used to do was it used to, at the end, yeah, I'll go into it, at the end of this, it used to open the window, but now we are returning it. The reason we're returning it is so we can create new instances of it. But yeah, so instead of opening it, because if I open it, well, I've already been through that, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's the point there. So we're creating a new instance of that window. And well, I will explain actually. That's just so when you click the logout button, you can actually destroy the window and just clear up all the memory, and then you can log back in, and then you sort of like you're starting again. Everything's not clogging up in the background. So yeah, so that's why we're doing that. So that's all that is. I've just commented this out. This is what we had before. This was when we were closing the window, but we're not doing that now, because we're not doing that now. The reason we're not, because this is all this stuff here that we're closing and getting rid of is for this login window. And before, we were completely destroying it and getting rid of it all, because we were opening that startup window and we were never going to go back. But now, because we've got the log out button, we are going to come back. And if we've completely destroyed it and then we click go back, there's nothing to go back to. So we're keeping that in memory. So yeah, so in startup, the thing that's changed is we're returning the window, not opening it. So then let's go to my tips. So in my tips, this is pretty much the same as latest tips. The difference here is when we get down to say clicking the load more, instead of going to the other file, what was it called? I think it was just called load more. Get more API. Now we're going to this get more my tips API, and the difference in that is now when we do this call at the top to this URL, we used to only pass the oh wait, I'm in the wrong one. That's to load more. Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, I should have done it the opposite way around. But this is for the load more button in the My Tips window. And what we're doing is we're still passing this start, but now we are also passing the user ID, and we're getting the user ID from this app property here, which we went through in the last video. But yeah, sorry, I should have skipped that, and I should have looked at this one first, where it's My Tips API. And My Tips API it does the same thing as what the Get Latest Tips did, but this time, again, as before, we're passing the current user's ID. And the reason we're doing that is because when we're in the My Tips window, we only want to get tips for the current user, or else there's no point to the window otherwise. All it is so you can go on and you can see your content, and then you could, I guess we could add an edit function within there, I suppose. I don't know if it's worth it. We could do, but yeah, that's what that is. So if I go into these two PHP files now, right, so here's the PHP for it. So we've got latest my tips, and this is the call to get the current user's latest tips. And then we've got load more my tips, and this is the call for loading 5 more of the current user's tips. So if we look at latest, it's the same as before where we connect to the database, but this time we've got this ID variable here, and what that is getting the current user's ID that we're passing in that URL. So the query is the same apart from this part here, where we want to select this from our table, but now we're saying where the user ID is equal to this ID. And that ensures that we're getting the correct data out of there. So it's quite straightforward. It's the same as before. And then the load more my tips is pretty much exactly the same as the original load more, but this time again we're passing this ID. So it's the exact same query. Select this from our table, but now again we're saying where user ID equals that ID. And then there's our pagination stuff. But yeah, so that's that on there. So I'm not going to go any more into that because I think it's stuff that we've already been through. So there's no point me repeating the same thing when we've already gone through it and it's already there. So I don't want to bore anyone. So what I'll do now is I'll do what was requested, and first I'm going to go through the folder structure. And what I've done is, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but right, so here's the folder structure. So what we got, this would be when you open your projects folder. So if I go to Tip Exchange, the actual folder, then what I'm going to see is this info.plist, and the reason that's there is because in one of the older videos where I went through having a custom font, I went through moving this info.plist up to be in the main directory, and that is so it doesn't get regenerated each time, so you can put specific things in there like stuff to do with the orientation or fonts and all that sort of stuff. Even the name of the app, you can change all that within there. So yeah, so then you have your resources directory. Every project has the resources directory. That is where everything goes. So what I've got is in this main folder, I've got the custom font, app.js, Then I have a few folders. So these ones in capital letters are my actual folders that I have. So within resources directory, I have an API folder, control, functions, images, iPhone, modules, and UI. So I'll just go through what's in each of these. So I hope that makes sense. Resources folder, inside that is this API folder. Inside the API folder are these files. Should make sense. So so my API folder is a folder that I use to put all of the files which are going to make API calls. Basically just files that access data from the server and bring it back. So that's where I tend to put everything, and I do that because if your project gets quite big and you have to quickly change something, I know that if it's something to do with a data call, it's going to be in there. So that's the first place I'll go to. So yes, that's where I keep all that, and at the minute these are the 4 files that are in there, and these are all files that have been completed in these videos. Like that and that were added in this video. So then we've got the control folder. The control folder, I use it as it's where I put the startup file for everything, but it's also where I put things that are kind of top level of the app. So I put the login screen and the create user, because I see those as kind of not abstract from the app, but I see those as outside of the app. They're things that you have to do before you get into the content of the app. So that's why they are out here, because these are things that determine the workflow, I guess, or the user journey, whatever you want to call it. So anything that determines that goes here. So yeah, so we've got the start, which literally starts it up. But we've got the login screen and the create a user screen, because as I said, I see those as being outside of the actual experience of the app, or the main content, the feast, if you want to call it. Right, so then I've got this iPhone 5 folder. All that is iPhone 5 screen equivalents of these 3 files. And pretty much it's not much has changed. It's more like styling stuff that's changed, like the width of the window and positioning of stuff and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, if ever I've got an iPhone 5 folder, it's pretty much going to have the exact same files that are outside it, but be styled for iPhone 5. So then we've got this functions folder, and that is empty. Even though it's empty, I've still wrote it down, because what I do with a functions folder is, in a few apps, if I create any JavaScript functions, like for trimming text, or like calculating some data, some maths, or some other stuff, string replacing stuff, regular expressions and all that, I'll normally have a functions file that I put in here. It just so happens that for this, I haven't really done any for this one, but I thought I'd mention it because it's always good. It's a good it's something that I like to do. Again, it's the same as the API call thing, where I know if I do a function for something, I think, fuck, I'll put it straight in this functions file, because I know I'll need it at some point. But yeah, in this, I haven't done it for this one. So then we have an images folder, and this is just where I put all of my images that I create for the buttons, the backgrounds, and all that sort of stuff. I put all in there. Then there's an iPhone folder. In the iPhone folder, that just has the splash screens, the app icons, and all that sort of stuff. All the stuff that's generic stuff, really, I'll put into there. Modules. So this is empty as well for this project, but sometimes if I include, say, a Twitter module or something like that, then sometimes I'll put it in this local directory. So yeah, then we've got UI, and this is generally where most of my files will be. So in my UI, these are my windows, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I should have just said that to begin with, but yeah, that's how I do it. That's how my mind works anyway. Is in UI, I know these are my windows. But as I mentioned, if it was a tabbed app, then I'd probably each tab would be a separate file. Yep, and then we've got an iPhone 5 folder here, and inside that is literally all of those files, but styled for iPhone 5. I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps clear any sort of confusion. But as I said, I will be giving all the code away at the end, and I'll be styling. I'll be sorting the app anyway, completely sorting it before I give away the code. But yeah, I'll do a video in a couple of videos probably, and I'll go through what I've done and then just give it away. Hopefully it'll be helpful. But yeah, so the last thing I'm going to talk about quickly, try and be quickly, is the database table information. So for this app, there's two tables. We've got the tip exchange users and the tip exchange tips. So users is, as it says, it's the users, and tips is the actual individual tips. So let's go through this one, which is the users. So this contains the user information, and the most important field in this is the ID. I use this ID field as the user's unique identifier. This field is the primary key, and it auto increments with each row, and each row is a new user. So that means every time we add a user to this table, it's going to have a unique ID, and that ID is what separates them from everyone else. They could have the same the same information completely, but well, actually we're checking for usernames, but potentially they could have everything else the same. As long as this ID is separate, we can identify the user. So then the other one, we've got the tips. This table stores all of the tips for the app. We link the tips and the users with a column in the tips table. I have a column called user ID, and the user ID field matches the ID from the users table. So for each tip, we have the title, the description, the image. I don't know what else. Do we have a timestamp? I can't remember. But we have a user ID field, and the user ID matches the current user's ID, or the user who uploaded the tip. The tips also have an ID field, and this is their primary key. Now, primary key is all tables need it, and primary keys are indexed automatically. And what indexing is you index fields to increase performance. So if you're going to have a lot of queries and you're going to be sorting things by the user ID, ID, etc., then you're going to want to index those fields. So a standard ID for a table will be indexed anyway if it's the primary key. But what I've done in this one is for the tips table, the ID is the primary key, which is indexed, but what we've got is this user ID, which we have also indexed. And that is because if we ended up with 1 million users, 20 million tips, and when someone goes in the app and they go onto my tips page, we want that query to be as fast as possible. So we need to index any fields that we can to help that query in performance. You don't want to index too many, but you also do want to think about it. I mean, it helps your app scale and everything like that. So indexing it's a good thing to look into. So let me see what I've wrote here. So in this app, we haven't joined the tables yet. So I'm not going to read the rest of what that says, but what I was thinking earlier is I haven't used any joins, and I was thinking when would I need to in this table? And a join is when, say you want to do one query to your database, but from that query you want to get information from multiple tables. So when you need that, you need to use something called a join. I think in the next video I might go through joins, because it'd be quite helpful, I guess. But I've got a little link here. It's a blog post I did ages ago, and it's just there's the URL for it. But it's just my site /blog/MySQL -queries, and what that's got is it's got a few ready-made queries in there. It's got like select, update, delete, insert, search, and all of the shit. I can't remember what else is there, but there's quite a few. So there's not much information there, but you could just copy and paste the queries out. But what I'd say is if you're not sure what I'm going on about at all, there's loads of videos on YouTube about joining tables, indexing fields, and all the rest of it. So